Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to walk you through two different preparations of mayo, one being a traditional American mayo and the other being a Japanese mayo called Kewpie. Both beautiful in their own right. I'll be doing a little taste test at the end with the BLT, so stay tuned for that. And I'm actually going to talk through this video in real time instead of a voiceover, so I hope you guys enjoy the change up for this one. All right, let's get into it. All right, what's up guys? All right, so today's gonna be a little bit different. As you can see, I'm gonna be doing a cook and talk. I'm gonna be talking and cooking at the same time. So it's kind of nice to be able to break that little barrier of a voiceover. Today's recipes are gonna be two different mayos. One being a Kewpie Mayo, which is something that I actually recently just discovered. I actually tend to make mayo that way. And then I guess a regular American mayonnaise that most of us Westerners are used to. Both of them are gonna be using an emulsification, which is a very almost overused term with chefs and really savvy cooks, but it's also a very important one because otherwise, if you didn't understand the term, you really wouldn't get what's happening in the recipe. These are super simple recipes, and they're both used in different ways and similar ways, but they do differ a little bit for different reasons. So let me dive into the first one. So this one's gonna be a pretty traditional American mayonnaise or Westerner mayonnaise. I don't even know if it's American. This is just what I typically see on the backs of a mayo bottle or jar at the store. This one uses whole eggs as opposed to the Kewpie Mayo, which is just gonna be egg yolk and pretty rich. So let me crack these eggs. I'm gonna use 2 whole eggs for this. And really, you don't even need to do this. I don't know why I did that. So I'm just gonna pour this straight into the mason jar. And this one's gonna be using just the distilled vinegar. You want to make sure you have a good amount of acidity in this. That's what makes the mayo really good. And then salt. Good amount of salt. That should be good. And what I like to do is ice. Ice machine's being a little weird. A little technical difficulties. And that's when I do the VOs, I usually edit stuff like that out. So you do a little ice, and the reason I do this is because normally I'd add cold water, but lately I've been making my mayonnaise with ice because it just keeps the mayonnaise super solidified and makes sure that if it's warm outside or your home tends to run a little warm, you're definitely not gonna break the mayonnaise because the hotter the environment, the more likely the two fats tend to separate. So this is the trick of mayonnaise, super simple. You can there's 2 things. You're either gonna whisk this as fast as you can with a wet towel under a bowl, or you can use something with a little more high power, or a blender if you want, but the idea is you're incorporating air in between the 2 fats slowly. And that's what's gonna make a nice, like almost rich, very thick mayonnaise. Towards the end of this, you can actually really pick up the pace with the oil because now you've already created that base, so you're not worried about that really fragile beginning. You can go faster and faster with the oil emulsification. Now, you want to make sure it's like the mayonnaise at the store, right? So it can't be too soft. This might be a little too soft for me, and it'll set up a little bit more in the fridge. That's also why I use the ice, because it just speeds up that cool down process. But I want a little bit more of the oil in this, just the last little bit. One thing to note with this last little bit of emulsification is it tends to settle on top. The oil tends to settle on top. So you kind of have to push it down and mix it around as you're turning it. And in a really high speed blender, you don't really have to worry about this. You might even have to shake it a little bit. All right. Give you guys kind of a little idea of just how thick that is. It should not drip ever. And like I said, you can even be a little thicker than that. Boom, first mayonnaise, donezo. All right, do a little cleanup. And don't quote me on this because it's different for everyone. The heat of your kitchen, how sanitary you are, hygiene levels and things like that. But that mayonnaise could stay in the fridge for like 2 months. I tend to make a little bit less, but I'd say 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a month in the fridge, as long as you don't dip other nasty stuff in there as you're making your sandwiches, and just making sure you're clean with it. All right, next up is the Kewpie Mayo. This is something that I just learned. Actually, my buddy Matt Broussard, a cook named Matt, I'm sure you guys know him through TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. He like blew up the last 2 years. We used to work together, did pop-ups together. I recently saw a video of his on TikTok or Instagram, I forget what it was, a couple weeks ago, where he was talking about Kewpie Mayo, and I had no idea. I tend to make mayo like that. So when I saw it, I'm like, wow, man, actually, I make mayo the way Kewpie Mayo is made. The only difference is the usage of rice wine vinegar and a little bit more egg yolks, and that's about it. So let me run you guys through that real quick. Gotta make sure this is really egg rich. So we're gonna do 4 eggs. 2, 4. 1 broke, so I'll have to do 5. Of course, you could separate them however you like. Boom. So these are gonna go into the mason jar. Rice wine vinegar. It's gonna give it a little fruitiness. Good amount. And one thing I failed to mention is Dashi. Very important. Salt. And this is my little personal touch. I always like to use a little bit of ice. Keeps it nice and cold. Some people say this is controversial. Some people like to do it when it's warm. I just feel like that's kind of asking for some trouble. And then my oil. All right, we're in business. So, same thing. For last, I didn't mention for the American mayo that each yolk tends to hold about a cup of oil. Since it had the egg whites in there, it could hold maybe a little bit more. So for this one, I'm not gonna worry too much about it because there's 4 yolks in there, so technically I could make 4 times this, but since it's Kewpie Mayo, you wanna make it really rich. That's the whole point of having some more egg yolks in it. So I'm just gonna start the emulsification. And just every once in a while, you wanna stop and just make sure there's no slick of oil on top, because sometimes it does accumulate and you don't realize the bottom is actually becoming mayo faster than the top, and it creates this barrier, and that's a lot of the times why it will split, is you don't realize the emulsification is off and separated halfway in between. A little bit more salt. You want to make sure that your mayo has a good amount of salinity. Otherwise, it's not right. All right, that should be good. Now, what I've noticed with Kewpie Mayo, it tends to be a little bit thinner. I mean, it's almost custard-like. Good. But just a little bit thinner than American Mayo. Oh, that should be good. Ooh, that looks good. Gonna make sure it has that almost yellow tinge to it, and that's the big differentiating factor between like Western mayo and Kewpie Mayo. To kind of give you guys a look. So still pretty stiff, but just a little drippy, you know? All right, I'm going to put a lid on this and keep it in the fridge, or put it in the fridge for about 45 minutes to an hour, just so it just kind of like sets up and makes me feel comfortable that it's cold. So before I make my BLT, I'm gonna show you guys just a little color difference because the mayos are done setting up in the fridge. This one is like super white and very like almost like gelatinous. Just give you guys a sense. So it's a little bit more runny, but it has that yellow, almost like custardy color to it. Beautiful. Now it's time for BLTs. Well, that was fun. Got my 2 mayos here, the Kewpie and the regular American mayo, and of course the 2 halves to the BLT. I'm gonna dive into these and tell you if I can even tell the difference between the 2, because they're very, very similar. Of course, when they're embedded within a BLT, They can be masked a little bit, but this is like my favorite sandwich, and I use my homemade mayo on it all the time. So let me dive in. Gonna get everywhere. So good. My favorite sandwich. Classic flavor, really clean, nothing fancy or exotic with it. Love that BLT. Now it's time for the Kewpie. Yeah, you definitely can taste the difference. Even with the bacon, it's definitely a bit more savory, a little more umami flavor. That dashi, the rice wine vinegar, gives it a little bit of that fruitiness that you wouldn't get from distilled or like a white wine vinegar that you'd use for the American mayo. So this is definitely more up my alley than the Western mayo. Yeah, really, really good. Definitely more rich, has a little bit creamier of a mouthfeel. And like I said, more flavor coming out. And you can even go crazy. I've seen recipes where it has like a little bit of garlic powder or like a little bit of soy product in there. I've even seen ones with MSG in it, which is a very controversial topic, but I guess that's kind of the original Kewpie additive that they put in the mayo, just to give it that full flavored, not to use the word too much, but that umami flavor. So definitely great recipes. I'd use both of them. When I make mayo, I probably tend to blend the two, so I use it pretty yolk heavy, but I do add more oil than the Kewpie mayo. I don't use rice wine vinegar. I tend to use like a blend of apple cider and distilled. And I also use Dijon mustard in mine. Sometimes it helps with that binding agent right in the beginning. It gives something the oil to really hold on to in the beginning of the emulsification phase. So it's kind of like a cheat. And it adds a little Dijon flavor to the mayo as well. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy this recipe. If you enjoy my channel and enjoy this recipe, make sure you give it a like, subscribe to my channel. Make sure you guys hit the notification bell if you guys haven't been receiving my videos. I know a lot of you guys have been complaining about that, so hit that bell. And my dog's wiggling his ears right now. Drop a comment below letting me know videos, requests, different recipes, things like that you want to see on my channel, so drop a comment below. The ingredients for this will be in my D box. Equipment links will be there as well, so check those out, and I'll see you guys next time with another recipe. Later, folks.